Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha. I'm a reporter for Buha's Block, and welcome to another live show. The Lakers just beat the Dallas Mavericks 129-119 for their sixth straight win. They improve to 14-4, remain the number 2 seed in the Western Conference. Also officially stamp that they will be hosting the NBA Cup quarterfinals at home against the San Antonio Spurs. So they earn the number 2 seed overall in the Western Conference. We'll be hosting Victor Wembanyama and a tough Spurs team on December 10th at home. And then if they advance, if they beat San Antonio, they will play the Oklahoma City Thunder, who I'm just going to put them ahead to the next round. They are playing the Phoenix Suns, who they just beat, and they have a plus 75 margin in their group play. But shout out to the late night gang. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Appreciate you all. Hope you all had a great Thanksgiving with your family. I hope you all had some great family and friend time. I know I did. My son's out here this week, so it's been a great week. Spent some time with Mama Buha and my dad and my brother, who's in town from New York. So my wife, of course, and it's been a great week. So Lakers win 129-119. 6th straight win, improved to 14-4. And my overarching thought from this game was, this is what it looks like when the Lakers actually make 3-pointers. And what I mean by that is we've seen teams start to progressively sell out against the Lakers offense. And even the likes of Austin or Luka off of the ball, because those guys have really struggled with their catch and shoot 3-point shooting, and they've been blitzing more, trapping more. I think the pinnacle of this was the OKC game, where LA really struggled against that specific type of defense. We have seen them from that point, I think, progressively handle those situations better. But one of the weaknesses or shortcomings within their offense has still been the 3-point shooting. And they had some regression against the Clippers, where Austin and Luka both made several threes. They made 13, which was tied for the third most on the season. But tonight against Dallas, and particularly in that third quarter, LA exploded, and they finished with 18 3-pointers, a season high in threes for them. Still only took 35, which, it's not sustainable that they're going to shoot 51% on threes every single night. But this felt like the right balance within the offense of, they have been far more tilted toward 2-pointers and free throws in terms of their offensive efficiency and just the way that they're generating points. I thought tonight was a proper balance between shot really high on 2-pointers. Looking it up here quickly, I believe they were 66% on twos, so 51% on threes, and then 81% at the line on 26 attempts. So this felt like a replicable blueprint for LA in terms of shot distribution and just the flow and rhythm of the offense. And this was against, for all of Dallas's struggles this season, they were the number 2 defense entering tonight. They just got Anthony Davis back. I thought he had some good moments, some impactful moments in the paint, protecting the rim, had 3 blocks, altered several others. So this was a really tough matchup for LA's offense. We saw some of the size and length and athleticism discrepancy between these two teams show up at various points, and that led to this game being a bit closer than anticipated, because the flip side was Dallas entered this game with the 30th ranked offense, and actually for much of the season had been, when comparing where they stood in terms of how far away they were from league average, it was actually shaping up to be one of the worst offenses of all time. Of course, adjusted for inflation with pace and all that stuff. But in terms of where they stood compared to league average, they were one of the worst offenses of all time. So that end of the floor was not as encouraging, and I will touch on that a little bit later. But in terms of the offensive end, for LA to get 35 plus from both Luka and Austin, for them to hit this many threes, only 14 turnovers, which is a little bit higher than you want, but is still a fair number. Like, I think that's in that sweet spot range of like 12 to 14. 14's on the higher side, but you don't really want more than 14 turnovers in a game. And, did not rebound the ball particularly well, got out rebounded overall, gave up 14 offensive rebounds, 26 second chance points. But despite that, I thought LA's offensive execution out of those traps and blitzes, and looking at Austin and Luka in particular, but even LeBron, like LeBron as a weak side shooter and playmaker, where those guys could reverse the ball to LeBron on the second side. Then LeBron's either catching and shooting, and he had a couple threes tonight, or he's attacking the closeout, or all of a sudden the defense shifts back over and then LeBron could reverse the ball back to the weak side. So he had a lot of high level plays out of weak side actions and post ups, finished with 7 assists again. So that's been a theme with LeBron offensively. But really looking at Luka and Austin and their ability to, like, Luka had at least 3 times where he split the pick and roll and immediately got downhill for a layup. But it was splitting the pick and roll at a high level, made all of his free throws tonight. Austin was just cooking any and everybody. And just because of the defensive matchups, and this is where you have to pick your poison against the Lakers offense, they were putting Ryan Nembhard, who had a hell of a game, by the way, 17 like, it looks like a carbon copy of his brother. It's a Spider-Man meme with his brother. He's a little bit smaller than his brother, but he's out there just cashing those mid-range jumpers and hit a few threes and playing pressure defense. Like, not as good of a player as his brother, not as good of a defender, but offensively, this dude is ahead of schedule, especially as a two-way player. But like, Ryan Nembhard was a primary guy on Austin. They also played a lot of Brandon Williams on Austin, and then they also played a lot of Klay Thompson on Austin. So none of those 3 are ideal players against Austin. Like, we've talked about it before, Austin struggles against athleticism and length. If you put a smaller dude on Austin, he is going to body that dude. He's going to, especially if he's as quick or it's relatively close, he will get a step on that guy with his shiftiness, with his burst, with his handle. And Austin cooked their point guards. He cooked Klay Thompson, who's just too slow to defend him at this point. And Austin had an amazing game tonight. Really was, I felt, the offensive engine in really important moments, and especially when Luka was off the floor, it was the Austin show. And we had seen them try to balance Austin and LeBron together. Tonight it was just like, let Austin cook. And in that second quarter, and then parts of that fourth quarter, he had some huge stretches offensively. But I think the Lakers have progressively looked more comfortable against these types of defensive coverages that they've been facing, in terms of really forcing the ball out of Luka's hands. And yes, there were certainly some turnovers tonight out of those. There were some times where the Mavericks got the better end of that battle. But for the most part, I thought LA passed every level of the test. And we saw them, they had the lasers inside to Deandre Ayton against a mismatch, or even just wide open for a dunk, a layup, a foul. They had the skip passes to the corner for Rui, hit several big threes in the second half after having a rather, I thought, disappointing first half. But then also, as I said, like, LeBron sometimes is a second side guy. So, like, they kind of hit you with every look and every wrinkle to how to attack this style of defense. And again, like, the one thing the Mavericks had done well this season was defend. You saw even with their rotation, they shifted away from guys like D'Lo was a DNP CD tonight, because they've really leaned into this defense first identity and just hitting you with a bunch of size and athleticism. And that's the type of team that can give LA trouble. They did give the Lakers some trouble tonight. They had the lead with just under 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So this was a pretty close competitive game that Lakers pulled away late. But like, for the first 40 minutes or so, Dallas was right there. But still, LA, I thought, passed every phase of testing that Dallas's defense threw at them. And outside of like OKC and maybe Houston and like Detroit, this is, I think, the exact type of defense that can give the Lakers a lot of problems with their athletes and their size. And the fact that LA was able to, again, like, the shooting is not sustainable. They're not going to hit, they hit 8 threes in the third quarter. Everybody was hitting everything. that's not going to sustain, but they've been due for some positive shooting from deep, right? They've been ice cold all season. So this is them regressing to the mean in a positive sense. But more so for me, it was the process of how they created those shots, and the shot distribution overall, I thought was another step in the right direction. And I've said this now in 3 of the 4 games that LeBron has played in. Like, I think, with the exception being the game in Utah, the 3 home games at least have all been, in my opinion, like steps in the right direction for LA's offense, and just like another building block, another stepping stone for what they're going to be. So like them dropping 129 on the Mavericks to me is more impressive than them dropping 135 on the Clippers, because the Clippers don't have they're not as good defensively as Dallas. They don't have the same level of size and athleticism and high quality defenders that can test the Lakers. Like, obviously they got Zubats, they got Kawhi, but like it's a different beast. So the fact that the Lakers did this when at times like Cooper Flagg's the 4th biggest guy on the court for Dallas, or is, nominally like the shooting guard, that just shows you that I think this was just a nice win for LA in that regard of being able to score so easily against this Dallas defense. In terms of notable performers, I already touched on a couple, but start with Austin, 38 points, 8 rebounds. This continues a trend recently. Like, Austin's always been a good rebounder for a guard, but if you look at some of his recent game logs, and it's actually been kind of since LeBron came back, but last 3 games, 10 rebounds, 9 rebounds, 8 rebounds. And before then, he had the 111 rebound game in Sacramento. Otherwise, his season high or second highest total had been 7. So Austin has really stepped up on the glass over these last 3 games, and that trend continued tonight. 12 of 15 shooting. Dude did not miss at all tonight. 6 of 8 on threes. And again, I believe he hit 3 of the Lakers' 8 threes in that third quarter. That was a really important stretch for LA. 3 assists. So one of the things that we continue to see is like Austin is far more of a scorer than a playmaker right now. I think the way, like, we had questions about how this was going to look once LeBron came back and just what the hierarchy would be. I think that we're starting to see the hierarchy shake out, where Austin is the number 2 scorer, and obviously like Luka's number 1 scorer, Luka's number 1 playmaker, Austin's the number 2 scorer, LeBron's the number 3 scorer, and then LeBron's the number 2 playmaker, and Austin's the number 3 playmaker. And it does make sense to me, because I still think for as great or as good as Austin's been as a playmaker, he's still probably a better scorer than playmaker overall, or passer. Whereas LeBron can do both. Obviously, excels in both regards, and is one of the best players to do both of those things. It might be the best player ever at those 2 specific things combined. So like, I think if you're asking LeBron to do a little bit less in terms of creating for himself, and maybe he just at this point is still ramping up, and you want to be careful with that, it makes more sense to leverage his playmaking and his passing, which is less of a physical toll on LeBron, less of a physical ask compared to having Austin do that and him taking a step back. So I think it's going to ebb and flow, right? There's no, like, even when we talk hierarchy, some nights it'll be, Rui gets 15 shots. Some nights it'll be DeAndre Ayton gets 15 shots. Like, that's just how a game goes. The matchups and the scheme will dictate the ultimate hierarchy for that given night. But I think as things average out here over the coming weeks and months, I think Austin is going to be more of the number 2 scorer, and that's probably going to be somewhere in that like 24 to 26 point range. And then LeBron will be more of the secondary facilitator behind Luka. But again, it's early. It's only been a few games, so we'll see how it continues to develop. Luka, 35 points, 10 of 18 shooting, 4 and 9 on threes, 11 of 11 at the free throw line. That was huge. Like, he's missed in some of these close games. He has missed, tends to miss like 2 or 3 free throws, and hit them all tonight, and they were all very big. 5 rebounds, 11 assists, a block, and just best player on the floor. And I don't know what else to say with Luka. If you look at especially his last few games as well, this dude, last 5 games, 41 points, 37 points, 33 points, 43 points, 35 points. The assists, 6, 8, 10, 13, 11. dude is just playing at an MVP level right now. And I thought again tonight handled the pressure really well. And I thought progressively looked more comfortable against the way that Dallas was zoning up the backside, and had a slew of great passes out of double teams, and also again got downhill, got to his floater, drew fouls. So just another overall really impressive game from Luka. Deandre Ayton made his return, 17 points, 8 rebounds, a steal, and 2 blocks, 8 of 9 shooting. Had the one shot that was blocked emphatically by AD, but otherwise was perfect from the floor. Going to touch on DA a little bit more later, so I don't want to spoil that takeaway. Then we have Rui, very quiet first half, did not score in the first half. I believe it was 0 for 4, but then went 5 for 13 overall. So I guess quick math, that's 5 for 9 in the second half, including hitting 4 threes, hit a couple of big threes. While like the game was starting to get away from the Lakers a little bit early there in the third, then Rui responded with a couple of big threes. Then LeBron gets that layup, and that little stretch there, I think it's going to fly under the radar. Like now I'm highlighting it, but that was a really big stretch because the game was starting to tilt in Dallas's favor somewhat convincingly, or not convincingly, maybe a strong word, but like they had all the momentum, right? They had the big second quarter. They were starting to pull away a little bit to start the third. I think they were up by 7 or early in the third. And then the Lakers like responded. Rui hit a 3. He hit another 3. Then LeBron got the layup, and all of a sudden LA was back up 3. Dallas called timeout. So I thought Rui's defense tonight was problematic, and he was the culprit on a lot of like the Lakers continue to really struggle with off ball actions. And if you're doing some sort of weak side pin down, their teams are now back cutting religiously off of that. And there's a lot of off ball communication issues. I would put it largely on LeBron and Rui as like if you get LeBron and Rui in an off ball action, you're probably going to get a good look out of that right now. But, so I thought the defense was relatively subpar tonight, but he hit several big shots. The 2 in the third, also had another big one. I think it was 114, 110. So Dallas was still within striking distance. Rui hits the 3, 117, 110. So, Rui right now is the Lakers' best shooter. He is the most reliable shooter. He's the guy you have the most confidence in. And he hit several big shots tonight that were difference makers in that second half. Then LeBron nearly did not get to his, continue his double digit scoring streak, but did finish with 13 points, 5 rebounds, 7 assists, came back in late. He hit that 3, and that was a big shot. And also, I think had another bucket, missed a couple free throws, but 5 for 13, 2 for 6, 1 for 4. I will say defensively, and at times just throughout the game, like this was probably this was like where you could see some of LeBron's like current physical limitations. I don't want to extrapolate it out and say that he is no longer the same player or that he can't get back to doing what he did last year. But, Utah, I don't think quite tested him in the same way. And then even with the Clippers game, I don't think it was the same. But this one, it was like this turned into a track meet at times. This was guys. Dallas got downhill at will for stretches of this game. And again, some of the off-ball stuff, like there were times LeBron looked a little just like a 41-year-old or soon to be 41-year-old. And that's okay, but he still impacted the game with his rebounding, his passing, and did just enough offensively. Like I had some really timely buckets, I will say. Like I mentioned that layup he had, but he has a really good sense of when to attack. And when there's like a little hesitation from the defense, LeBron just strikes and usually good things happen. And then not much to say from the bench group tonight. Gabe came in and had that stretch to close the first quarter where he hits a couple threes, then heat checks one, doesn't take another shot for the rest of the game, but led the bench in minutes. It's worth noting that Marcus Smart missed tonight because of back spasms. And then Jackson Hayes played 12 minutes. I thought he was a bit up and down. Like I thought he got pushed around a bit by Daniel Gafford. And I know that like Gafford ultimately didn't have the biggest game in terms of counting stats, but I thought you saw the difference between like a true 265-pound big versus Jackson. And we've seen that before, but it was like, despite their numbers being relatively similar, I thought Gafford was more impactful and specifically against Jackson won those minutes. So like Jackson had that really nice dunk that, he just took the ball and stampeded downhill and took off seemingly like right inside the free throw line. But I thought it was fine for his 12 minutes. Jake had another quiet performance. I thought had some good moments defensively, but didn't even take a shot tonight. And that to me is like Jake LaRavia should never play a game and not take at least a few shots, let alone, one shot, right? So the fact that Jake didn't take one, the bench minutes were kind of rough tonight, to be completely honest. And then Maxi Kleber had, I thought, his worst stretch as a Laker, maybe since go back to game 5 against Minnesota, where 4 minutes, picked up 3 fouls, just looked old and slow out there, and had the one drive where he got completely stymied by AD, and just a really ineffective stretch there from Maxi. In terms of Saturday night, we have to highlight for the second straight game, the 3-point shooting, 18 of 35 for LA, 51%. I would say that, and then specifically looking at Austin, 6 for 8, Luka, 4 for 9, Rui, 4 for 8, with all 4 makes coming in the second half. So like those were the 3 guys that, particularly in that third quarter, I think each one of them had at least 2 threes. And that was huge for LA in terms of regaining momentum, regaining control. And then 3 takeaways. I'm going to go through these rather quickly, and then we will get into the Q&A. So takeaway number 1 is going to be Lakers are set up nicely to at least make the semifinals in the NBA Cup. So they have advanced to the quarterfinals. And as aforementioned, they will be hosting the Spurs on Wednesday, December 10th. By that point, Victor Wembanyama will likely be back. That is past the initial projected timeline in terms of his return timetable from his, I believe, is a calf injury. So not for sure yet that he will be back, but likely will be back. And Stephon Castle is supposed to be back by then. Dylan Harper just came back. So the Spurs have been playing well. They just beat Denver in Denver tonight. They have continued to win and maintain that top 5, top 6 spot in the West. We saw how close and how competitive that game was in LA, a couple of weeks ago, or however long ago that was at this point. So I'm really excited for that game. I think that's going to be a nice test for the Lakers. Spurs didn't have Harper or Castle. I mean, not Castle, Harper or Fox in that game, excuse me. And the Lakers didn't have LeBron James, and maybe someone else, I don't remember off the top of my head, but for sure LeBron. So that's going to change the complexion on both sides. And this is going to be, in some regards, a brand new matchup for both teams. So I'm really excited. Like, I think the Lakers are going to win the game. They should be favored to win the game, especially with how dominant they've been at home. But I just think that's a nice test for LA of course, Wemby on the inside. And like Wemby, I thought started to look much better in that fourth quarter against the Lakers. He really, they really bottled him up through the first 3 quarters, and then they finally started to get him going. So I think San Antonio has some stuff they can take from that game. But having the test of Fox, Castle, Harper, Vassell had a big game tonight. They've been shooting the ball well. Barnes, Champagnie, like this is a really good team that I think the Lakers should beat, but it's not going to be easy. Like they're certainly one of the better teams in the West, and in my opinion, one of the better teams in the league. So I think that's going to be a really fun matchup. Then, assuming the Lakers win, which I think they will go to Las Vegas for that game on Saturday, semifinals game against. I'm moving the Thunder ahead. You don't have to move the Thunder ahead. Maybe I am jinxing them by doing that, but like realistically, they just beat the Suns. I think they will beat the Suns in OKC. So it'll be a nice rematch for LA in Las Vegas, neutral site. So it's not going to OKC. It's not having to play in that arena. If anything, it's more of a home game for the Lakers based on their relationship with Las Vegas and Vegas fans and whatnot. So that'll be a really fun, potential matchup for the Lakers to get their lick back, get because next time they play OKC is February 9th, which is a few days after the trade deadline. So if they can get a rematch with OKC 2 months before then, that would be, I think, a really nice opportunity to, another measuring stick game of not only where the Lakers are at currently at that point, but also what they learned since the last matchup with OKC. And is it do the Lakers win? Is it a close competitive loss, or is it another blowout loss? Right? Like I think those are obviously the 3 ways that can play out. But I think a win or a close loss you're feeling a lot better about where the Lakers are at and how they stack up against OKC. If they get their butts kicked again, then, people will crash out, of course. But I think this is a really nice opportunity for LA to at least advance to the semifinals, have another rematch with the Thunder, and I think change the national conversation about them. Like it is slowly turning around and people are starting to take them more seriously. But as we know, coming into the season and even up to this point, there's been a lot of, is this fool's gold? And looking at the net rating, looking at the schedule, this and that. And people still aren't fully taking the Lakers serious as contenders. And this is their opportunity to show the national audience, the greater NBA and sports world, like, hey, we could beat the Thunder. We could beat anybody. We are right there in the mix. In terms of takeaway number 2, I mentioned Deandre Ayton earlier, and I think that for as great as the Lakers shot and as great as Luka and Austin played tonight, the Lakers don't win this game without Deandre Ayton. And I don't even think it was his best game of the season or even close to his best game of the season. For what it's worth, and again, small sample size, one game plus minus, but the Lakers were a plus 18 in his minutes, his 36 minutes tonight, which means that they were a minus 6 in the 12 minutes that he sat. And that was largely with, they went to some, I actually think Maxey played his entire shift with Ayton. So that was basically all of the Jackson minutes were the minutes that the Lakers lost that. But I thought DeAndre Ayton tonight, like we've seen with Luka looking more comfortable, with Austin taking a step, with the Lakers having a deeper, more coherent roster in rotation, that like this is a better team. This is a different team than the team we saw to close last season. But arguably the biggest difference and the most important difference is DeAndre Ayton and what he's capable of doing offensively. And it wasn't anything crazy tonight. It was just simply punishing mismatches, tapping balls out on offensive rebounds, tip outs and stuff, but just being able to score against an advantage and being able to punish opponents for, there's several times they just cheated off of him too far. And he was like, Luka lasers a pass, Austin hits him and he gets, gets fouled or finishes. And I just think that is like the other element here with the Lakers is that I think with Jackson Hayes, we've seen, yes, he's an above the rim finisher, and yes, he has an amazing connection with Luka, but there is a limitation with Jackson. I will note he did, now that I'm remembering this, he did bust out a left-handed hook tonight, which progress for Jackson, right? He's had some wild running hook shots before that. It's always an adventure with him in the post, but in all seriousness, like there is a limitation there with Jackson where teams can neutralize him by switching. The Lakers are not going to look to him really in the post against a mismatch. They're not really going to force feed him the basketball. It's mainly, can you get him a lob? Can you get him a dump off pass? Or can he get an offensive rebound based on, someone missing? But with DeAndre, it's just a different level of offensive threat. It's a different level of offensive touch and polish and skill. And I thought that was something that the Lakers really missed the last, game and a half or so that he was out. But, thinking about this matchup, like I do think this matchup goes differently if there's no DeAndre Ayton tonight. And even insert Marcus Smart, who I thought they missed tonight, put in Smart, take out Ayton. I think the Lakers lose this game. I thought Ayton was huge just with his two-way play on the interior. And again, was not his best rebounding game, was not his best defensive game. Dallas scored a lot while he was on the floor, and he was part of the problem with his help defense and whatnot. But I think overall, like he did just like not even just enough. I think that's selling him short. Like he did a lot, and going 8 for 9 and being as efficient as he was, and accepting like he has accepted his role this season, and it has been a diminished role in terms of post ups, in terms of going to him as a featured option. It's far more, can the Lakers create an advantage out of a pick and roll situation or some sort of defensive breakdown? And then it's feeding him a lob, a dump off pass, and him scoring there. So I thought DeAndre Ayton was really big tonight. And again, like there were some times where I thought he struggled defensively. He got pushed around a little bit by Gafford and AD. AD had the big block on him. Like, it was far from a perfect game. And I think in some of these matchups, we've seen some limitations with him against bigger, more physical centers. But overall, I thought he did his job tonight and really leaned into what the Lakers need from him. And then third and final takeaway before we get into the Q&A. I think tonight continued to show the Lakers' glaring lack of athleticism. And this is something that they need to address in some form or fashion. And it's really one of two things. It's either go make a trade at some point, which again, we're about a month away from trade season or starting, or play more athletic players, which looking at it would be Jared Vanderbilt or Adu Thero. I think the Vando train, or the Vando ship is kind of sailed up to this point where JJ has clearly lost confidence in him and he's become a DNP CD. But there were stretches of this game where Dallas just overwhelmed the Lakers with their swarming, with their size, the offensive rebounding. They beat them 26-4. And, I've been asked now a couple times recently about the LA Houston matchup, and Houston is basically a better version of Dallas. Like it's the inverse where, their defense isn't quite at the level of Dallas's, but they're still a top 5 defense and they're the best offense in the NBA. So like, whereas Dallas is having these possessions where like Nemhard's a 2-way guy or Brandon Williams is probably a third string point guard on a real competitive team. Like those are the two guys running the offense. They do have some unique big ball handlers in Washington and Flagg and Najee Marshall. And like, they're kind of a weird, funky team, but like Houston is that type of, they're not even running, a little bit through Reed Shepherd, but more so through Amen Thompson and Alperen Şengün and KD. And like, it's just, this to me was a little bit of like a Houston preview in a way, but a worse version, like Diet Houston with Dallas. And we saw like, even with that, some of the length, some of the athleticism really bothered the Lakers tonight. And yes, Marcus Smart being available would have helped, but Marcus Smart, for as impactful as he is, he's not the most athletic or longest, biggest guy, right? So this is still an issue for the Lakers that it might just end up being like, this is the roster, this is the roster issue. This is the issue with this team. And every team has an issue, right? Every team has a weakness, even the Thunder. Like every team has some side of the floor, some part of the roster that could be better or should be better. This just might be it with the Lakers. And there are going to be some athletic teams that are able, like, again, kind of looking at the games that the Lakers have lost, going back to that trip, it was like OKC and Atlanta in some regards, the most reductive sense, just like out athleted, which isn't even a word, the Lakers, right? And they were just quicker, faster, more athletic, more explosive, beat them to loose balls, beat them to rebounds, beat them in transition, beat them off the dribble. Like that's kind of the one way to beat this Lakers team right now is, you got to hit a certain amount of shots, but if you could dominate the possession battle and beat them to loose balls, beat them to offensive rebounds, like all that stuff, that's the way to keep it close. So this to me, what like, for as great as the offense was, the defense did have really good first quarter and some really nice moments in the second half, but there were also some really rough moments, like, second quarter and then different stretches of the third and fourth quarters where it's like the Lakers just look too slow and small and unathletic. And their offense is so good that it's not really going to be a problem against maybe 24 of the other 29 teams in the NBA. But come the top 5 or 6 teams, I do think it can be an issue. And I do think it's something that they're going to have to figure out. So, you can't practice that. You can't teach that. It is an innate physical trait and ability. So it's one of two things. They either go make a move, which I still continue to advocate, that fifth starter, or it's playing Thero or Vanderbilt or both and like adjusting the rotation to just try to meet size and force and athleticism with size and force and athleticism, right? But that was kind of my only nitpick from tonight was there were just some really rough stretches for the defense with the rebounding. Again, 26-4 in second chance points for Dallas. That you should never be losing the second chance points battle like that. And then also 19-6 in transition. Like those are two, on some level, effort and urgency. And the Lakers' transition defense was not good tonight. They also struggled to generate transition looks themselves. But some of it's effort and urgency, some of it's just straight athleticism and speed. And, those are things that the Lakers just don't really have in comparison with the top teams in the league, let alone a lot of the bottom teams in the league. So that continues to be a bit of a concern. But with all that said, let's get into the Q&A. Before we do, I'm going to take a quick break for the sponsor of this show, Rocket Money. But after a 1 minute quick ad, I'll be back and we will get into the Q&A. Thank you to Rocket Money for sponsoring tonight's episode. With the holidays and the prime of the sports schedule upon us, there is no better time to get your finances in order. Managing my monthly expenses used to stress me out, especially with all the sports subscriptions and streaming packages I was paying for. But Rocket Money helps me stay on top of it all, from managing my bills to game day expenses. Rocket Money is the app that helps you manage your money smarter. Whether you're cutting unused sports subscriptions, saving for tickets to your next game, or lowering your cable bill, it fits right into a sports fan's routine. Rocket Money helped me save a ton last year by identifying costs I didn't even notice. Between sports subscriptions, fantasy league fees, and takeout on league pass nights, it really adds up. Rocket Money makes saving simple. One of the best things Rocket Money does is negotiate my bills, like my internet and cable. Instead of spending time on customer service calls, Rocket Money does the work for me so I could focus on the game, not the bills. Join the 5 million Rocket Money users who are saving smarter every day. Whether it's cutting unnecessary sports subscriptions or finally sticking to your budget this season, Rocket Money makes it easy. Scan the QR code or the link in the description to get started for free. All right. I did a little early there, but you guys get the gist. There will be a link to Rocket Money in the description below after I update the show notes, and I will also put it in the comment section. But with all that said, let's get into the Q&A. First one here from Connor Phillips. Thank you for the super chat. Still pissed AR missed the free throw during the MVP chant. Yes, it was unfortunate. He went 8 for 9 tonight. So between he and Luka, they went 19 for 20, which is about as good as it gets, right? Like you can't really ask for more from those two. But yes, it was unfortunate that Austin missed that free throw. But hey, he deserved those chants. Oots of the week. Thank you for the super chat. LA wins, Denver loses. We done with tier below talk. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I keep having to I keep having to defend Denver, and I don't want to defend Denver. I will note again that they're, in my opinion, without their third and fourth best players and first and second best defenders right now with no Gordon and Christian Brown. I think despite the bench being better, they still are relatively top heavy with I think losing any of the starters really compromises that group. So I will just note that, right? I think that just like with the Lakers, anytime we talked about the Lakers losing some games or the Lakers net rating not being maybe as impressive as it should be, we acknowledged, hey, they're doing this without LeBron. They're doing this without Marcus or without DeAndre or without Jackson, Gabe, all the guys who have been out, right? And we contextualize it. I do think it's important to note that for the Nuggets are now 1-2 since Aaron Gordon went out. And I think that's that one in particular. Christian Brown, they're kind of getting by without him. Peyton Watson has been playing well, but I do want to note, they are missing a really big piece, and not I think this is also a testament to the Lakers of their ability to win shorthanded. Clearly that is not the case for every other team. And if you want to compare those or that particular area, I do think the Lakers shine in comparison with basically just about everybody else outside of OKC, who's obviously won without J-Dub, sometimes without Chet, sometimes without Caruso. So OKC continues to be the outlier in basically everything. But outside of that, the Lakers have shown an ability to win in ways that other teams have not, whether it's been a Denver or San Antonio or some of these other teams that when they've had multiple injuries to starters, they don't win those matchups, and LA has. So want to make a pro Lakers point there. But I mean, you could argue that the numbers, the net rating still is what it is. LA is climbing. Denver actually is falling recently with a couple losses. But yeah, I mean, you could argue that they're on the same tier. I don't have an issue with that. I just want to be fair to Denver here and at least acknowledge that like they're kind of going through it right now with the injuries, and they are deeper than last year, but they're not deeper to the point of if they're without Aaron Gordon or Christian Brown, like, or both of them, they are pretty susceptible to losing in the first round, in my opinion. Like, I think like this version of Denver, I don't even know if they're a top 4 team in the West right now with how they are without the starters. Thank you for the super chat. AR 3-point regressions. Yes, AR has been due for some regression, and the last couple games it has hit. So looking at his game logs here, 6 for 8 against Dallas, then 2 for 4 against the Clippers. Previous 2 games against Utah, he was a combined 2 for 12. So Austin he's only hit 5 or more threes in 3 games this season. So 2 leading into tonight, and then went 6 for 8 tonight. So yeah, Austin's been due. Austin is not a low 3-point or 30% 3-point shooter. He's a guy who's at least going to be around league average. And I think with like in a playoff series, maybe, right? We've seen it a couple times, but in a larger sample size of closer to 82 games, Austin has showed he is at least an average, if not above average 3-point shooter. And I thought really what got him going tonight was like the jump ball. Immediately they double Luka, and Austin's wide open on the right wing. He cashes that 3, and then from that point on, he's in a rhythm. So that was a really big opening play to just get him a catch and shoot opportunity, unguarded, makes it, and sometimes all you need is one to go down, and then it just starts flowing. Light him up. Thank you for the super chat. I love the wins, but I hate the defense not stepping up until the fourth quarters against OKC, Denver, and Houston. It's a habit that won't get it done. Thoughts? Yeah, I mean, this was something we talked about on Lakers Collective with Trevor and Jason about the personality of this team. There has been a little bit of a feel out process, and I think it is innate with this group to some degree, right? Like I think Luka kind of has that. Luka does go for the jugular in the first quarter, but like I think in general, that seems to be like a little bit of the way he plays. And then LeBron, especially, if you go back, I mean, how many times did we hear at various points, through the years of the LeBron feel out game, right? And in a playoff series, that game 1 is always a bit of a feel out. It feels like the Lakers have that quality of first quarters have been disastrous for them most of the season. Tonight was actually a good first quarter for them, but then they had a disastrous second quarter. So like a lot of times at halftime, the Lakers are in these close games that they probably shouldn't be. They've had several games they've been trailing at halftime that they probably shouldn't be. So the first half tends to be a little bit closer than it should, mainly due to the first quarter, but tonight again, it was the second quarter. Then they start to pull away in the third, and you see them often go into fourth quarters with some 6 to 12 point lead or 8 to 12 point lead, whatever. And then in the fourth quarter, they tend to pull away. So yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that was what I was talking about on the show, is like, I just think that the difference between these teams and the Lakers right now is that these teams, when they've been whole, again, I want to give like Denver a little bit of a caveat there, but when Denver's had their starting group, when OKC doesn't matter who plays, and then when Houston's been largely whole, these teams have had longer stretches of excellence than the Lakers. That's the net rating right there, is that the Lakers are in a lot of dogfights into the late third, early fourth that they probably shouldn't be in. Then they do just enough in the fourth, pull away to win, and they've been awesome in crunch time. They've been dominant in fourth quarters, which is great. Like that is a harbinger of playoff basketball and what it takes to beat good teams. But I would like to see more of the get up 15 in the first and just coast, or not coast, but like maintain that momentum throughout the course of a game. And yes, of course, human nature kicks in. You take your foot off the gas, the other team makes a run, and there's like the seesaw nature of a 48-minute basketball game. But the Lakers have still not really had many just convincing we get out to a giant lead and we just propel it forward for the entire game. And even tonight, like, you know, I mentioned the defense earlier, and as you are mentioning as well, but like my biggest gripe with tonight was that Luka had to play 40 minutes again and Austin had to play 41. And it's like the bench has just been, I mean, part of it's, I don't think the coaching staff fully trusts the bench on a nightly basis, which is understandable, but the bench has also been pretty shaky, and there are nights they look good, there are nights they look bad. And it still was putting a lot on the plates of Luka and Austin to a point where I just don't think this is a sustainable model. Like looking at Luka's minutes, let's say that the last 6 games, 40, 38, 34, 40, 38, 40. And yes, he's in better shape. Yes, he's in better condition, and that helps him sustain and handle that. But I just don't think you want Luka playing 38 to 40 minutes on a nightly basis for the entirety of the season. I think that is I think that's a big mistake personally. So I think the minutes have to shift, and the way the minutes shift is the Lakers have to be better in the non-Luka minutes, because that's been an issue all season, has been the non-Luka minutes. Tonight, plus 15 in Luka's 40 minutes, minus 5 in the 8 minutes Luka's been off. So that's been an area where they've been unreliable, I would say. So they got to figure that out. But to your point, I don't think it. I think if you want to put the Lakers on the same level as Denver and Houston, I don't have an issue with that. I think it is close there, jumbled with the 2 through 4. I do have a bit of an issue if you want to put them on the same tier as OKC. I think OKC, I don't think anyone right now should be on the same tier as OKC. And I mean, we could look at all of their numbers are just like historic right now. And they're looking like, I mean, up to this point in the season, they have been the best team of all time up to this point in the season. So I don't think that's something we should just gloss over. So I do put OKC in their own tier, but everyone else, if you want to put the Lakers number 2, you want to put the Lakers number 4, I have no issue with it. LA for life. I like when I answer a question and then the next question leads into it again. So you see bench is non-existent and it's concerning playoffs. Yes, I thought this is where they really missed Marcus. Marcus has been their best bench player. If we're going with like the projected starting group of the starting group that was there tonight, Marcus has been their best bench player up to this point this season. But Maxey had a really rough shift. Jake didn't take a shot. I think Jackson was a little shaky tonight, and then Gabe had the quick start, but then defensively, like Cooper Flagg had the one time where he shouldered him, checked him for the little jumper. And like, I like Gabe's defense. He had 4 fouls in 23 minutes. I just think he's too small for a lot of these matchups. And I don't really see, especially with how much LA is switching, I would prioritize size and athleticism in that case. And that's where I just like, that's the spot in the rotation. I think like based on his physical limitations, Gabe is doing about as well as you can do in those matchups. And I think Gabe's taken a lot of flack from the fan base and unwarranted flack to some degree. And I get it, but I also think like he does, like the offense is at a really high level when Gabe is on the floor because he's respected as a shooter. Tonight, 3 assists. Like he has been an effective secondary, makes a swing pass or is just reading the defense especially if he's like a third ball handler in a lineup. That's a pretty nice luxury to have, but he still is playing a little bit too much. Like tonight, no Marcus. Okay, I get it, but I don't know. I think in general, the coaching staff is relying on him a little bit too much. But yeah, I agree. The bench got thoroughly outplayed tonight, and they have been playing better overall, but they are not reliable. Like they are very up and down, and that is something that needs to even out at some point. To the we. Deep dive stats show we are great when we need to be. We find a way to win. Only team above us is OKC. We are same tier as Denver and Houston after tonight. That's fair. Like I don't have a real rebuttal to you. I do look at net rating and point differential, and I do factor those things in. I think there is a way to contextualize it though, where the Lakers the schedule is lightened up now, but up to the first like 10, 12 games of the season, they had played, I believe, like the fifth or top 5 toughest schedule up to that point. It's been a bit easier now, and LeBron is back. But I mean, looking at it now, so OKC's plus 15.9, Lakers are plus 3.9, Houston's plus 10.7, and Denver's plus 9.3. So there is still a bit of a gap there. Houston is nearly 7 points per game better than the Lakers. Denver's nearly 5-ish, or 5.5. And then if we go to net rating, if we pull up net rating, Thunder at 15.7, which is again just bonkers. Houston's at 11, Denver's at 9.2. Lakers are still at 12, or climbed up to 12. They're at 3.6. So it is trending in the right direction. I agree with they have shown an ability to be great when they need to be. And there is like a switch flipping with this group that their best, I think, is on the same level as Denver and Houston. The one thing I continue to critique is those teams have more wire to wire wins that are also indicative of, like, people have criticized OKC, or there's been now the pushback with OKC and their start with like how easy their schedule's been. They have played the easiest schedule in the NBA, so I think that is a fair rebuttal. But not everyone plays the same schedule technically, right? So I don't want to act like they're going to have the toughest remaining schedule, or you could look that up, but everyone, generally in the same conference, you're going to play a pretty similar schedule. Depends on division, and there's several teams you play 3 times versus 4, etc. But point being is, like, you play the schedule in front of you, and what OKC has done, with the exception of they've had a couple of closer games now against Minnesota and Phoenix. But as I noted a couple streams ago, or maybe even last stream, after the 5th game of the season, when they started 5-0, outside of the one loss to Portland, they had 12 straight games, their 12 straight wins, where they won by double digits. So it's like, even if they are playing easy teams, they are crushing those teams. There is no Atlanta loss in OKC's schedule. And there aren't really many like Charlotte style wins either, where they just show up for one quarter and win the game. So I think it is impressive. Like, I think there are multiple checkpoints for a great team, for a championship team. And the Lakers have crushed the checkpoint, a couple of checkpoints, I think, of winning through adversity, winning through multiple guys, second best, third best, whatever. I think second best player being out for most of the season. They still won at a high level. Like, all these close wins, being basically unstoppable in crunch time. Like that's, maybe those are even like 2 different checkpoints. Like they've passed those. I'll say that, like, those are the 2 checkpoints that, in my opinion, they have passed up to this point. Is like, in close games, the Lakers are lights out right now. They're executing at a high level on both ends of the floor, and then they've passed the adversity injury test up to this point. The one they have not really done yet, though, is like have the stretch even now of just dominating teams and dominating lesser teams. And I would like to see a little bit more of that. So that could sound like a nitpick, and maybe it is, but that is a mark of a great team, in my opinion. And I think the fact that the other 3 teams that we are comparing them to at the top of the West have all done that. Now, obviously, Houston and Denver to lesser degrees than OKC, which is why I think OKC is on their own level. But I do think that they need to show that more of like a level of, can we string together 42 great minutes out of 48 instead of just 16? Because right now they can do the 16 and they keep winning. But I do think at some point it like, because when you play OKC, they play OKC in 2 weeks, which I think they will. They're going to need to be on point for, like, that's going to be a playoff like game where they're going to need to be on point from the jump, and they're going to need to be on point. There can't be like a 3-minute stretch where it's a shaky bench lineup and like all of a sudden, they're down 2 and it stretches to 8, it stretches to 12. Like, that's it. The game's over. That, with how good OKC is, you go down like that, it's done. So the Lakers cannot have a stretch like that. And the fact that they tend to have so many of those stretches during games, that's what concerns me. It's like, it's like a muscle memory thing where, okay, you've shown me like you can kind of coast through the first 3 quarters and flip it in the fourth, but you can't do that against OKC. And I don't think you could do that against Denver or Houston either. So I hope what I'm saying makes sense. I'm not trying to be too harsh. I'm just saying, like, I do think there's another level that they need to get to in terms of just dominating teams from the jump. We've seen it a little bit more. Like I would, I'm trying to, like, the Milwaukee game was a pretty good example of this. Was basically they won up by double figures and they never relinquished that, right? Like Milwaukee had a couple of runs where they cut it to 10, but it never got any closer. That I want more Milwaukee wins like that. There was a reason why I said that was the best win of the season at the time. I still would probably contend that was the best win of the season. And it was because they took control of the game early and never let it go. And that's something that they just haven't done consistently. Zach Wan, thank you for the super chat. If we trade Rui and a first for Herb, our bench has little to no offense and will solely rely on the stars. Is it sustainable given the opposing defense thrown at them? This is a good counterpoint to trading Rui, and this has been why I've kind of settled on, like, I would rather not trade Rui. I would rather keep Rui. I think Rui should be moved to the bench. I think Rui should be staggered with LeBron and to a degree Ayton. I think that combination right now, I think is going to be problematic in certain matchups where I just think the collective off ball, like, defense and reads and processing has not been where it needs to be up to this point in the season. So, like, I'm of the belief I'd rather just move Rui to the bench and like reduce his role a little bit. He still needs to have a big role in this team, should probably be the sixth man. But I don't think he's a guy that I would want starting against OKC, Denver, Houston, or closing against OKC, Denver, Houston. I think it's either someone who's not on the roster, which potentially is a Herb, or Marcus Smart. Like that's the way that I would go. But it's fair. Like, ideally, Jake should be that guy. Jake is the guy that, we have seen reference the Minnesota game, but I'm pulling up his game logs right now. If you look at, so the Minnesota game, of course, stands out with the 27, but then he had 25 against Miami. He had 13 against Atlanta. I mean, Atlanta was, I'm not going to reference the Atlanta game, but then 16 against Utah at home. So, like, he's had some impressive showings offensively, but then he has a game like tonight, doesn't take a shot, has most of the rest of the season has been in single digits. So he's not, like, there is a gap there for sure with Rui and Jake, both in terms of offensive production, but then also the shooting. Now, I also think there's a gap between the two defensively and in terms of, like, intangibles and some of the other parts of the game that aren't really quantified. But yeah, I mean, it's a fair point. And this is where the Lakers are in a tricky spot where you kind of have to make, like, some difficult decisions with the roster and the way you want to build it. I think that the fact that Rui's been by far the most reliable shooter is another big point in his favor, because right now, if you take Rui out right now, it's like, yeah, they've had a couple of nice shooting games in a row, but it gets a little concerning there in terms of, like, guys that you actually trust around the big three. So I don't know. I think the ideal trade is probably one where you could keep Rui and add that fifth guy. It's just, at that point, you probably have to give up the first. And I know here you're already saying give up Rui in the first, but, like, if there's another way to get a different, type of fit guy that doesn't cost you Rui, I don't see a way you don't give up Rui or the first and get the, like, ideal fit guy. I think that's going to be really tricky to pull off with Gabe, Maxey, Dalton, and a second, and even the swaps. Like, I don't think that's enough. So we'll see. I don't have a great answer for you other than I would ideally try to not trade Rui, but if it came down to it, I would rather, like, I mean, it depends who's in the deal, but I would have some blind faith that Jake or Gabe could maybe pop in a larger offensive role, because, like, the alternative is standing pat. And then I think you just don't have enough defense and you don't have enough athleticism. So I think that's an area the Lakers, like, need to address, like, need to, not like want to, not like ideal, like need to. we'll see. An NBA enjoyer, thank you for the super chat, bro. I was getting mad at Rui for 75% of that game. Starting Marcus never been so apparent for half court and transition defense motor. Rui, great fourth though. Again, another time where I kind of answer the question and then it goes into the next one. Yeah, I mean, I you guys know where I stand with Rui in the starting group. I think the thing that some people push back on that I totally understand, and I think it's a fair pushback, especially off of tonight, is like, can Marcus stay healthy enough to be out there? And up to this point, like largely yes, but he obviously has missed now. Looking at his game logs, well, I'd actually have to go to Basketball Reference for that. But Marcus has missed, several games now, and it tends to be these like little one-off situations. So if you look at this season, he played 3 games, then he missed 2, then he did play 8 straight games, then he missed 1. Now he's played 3 games, missed 1. He's also had his minutes lower, so I wonder if maybe he's been dealing with the back spasms have been affecting him more than we know, or more than they've let on. And that's why his minutes have been a bit capped since LeBron came back. But yeah, I mean, I think I will note with Rui, like I thought this to me kind of summarized where the Lakers are at defensively. Is I thought Rui's best defensive possessions came when he was matched up with AD or Gafford, just based on LA switching scheme and sometimes cross matches and stuff. Because I think Rui guards bigs better than he guards wings. When he's guarding guys who are moving and cutting and coming off screens, that's just so like I thought he played a big role in several times getting back cutted, several times losing guys on the perimeter on switches, soft switching, not contesting. Like, it's just not a strength of his. And the unfortunate fact of the matter is, with the way the Lakers starting group is constructed and the way the roster is constructed, you have your 3 perimeter, stars out there that are only going to give you so much defensively. Then you have your center and Ayton. That 5th guy needs to give you something on defense. And I think Rui, he's had some nice defensive moments. I think most of it has come against bigs, but it's just not a strength of his. And it's not a knock on him. It's not like, I know sometimes people think I'm a little too hard on him or don't like him. And like, that could not be further from the truth. It's just, I think he's being played out of position. That's it. It's not, I think Rui's a really good player. And I think there are several teams, good teams, that he could start for and be impactful for. It's just the Lakers need a wing stopper and an athletic player who has a certain amount of speed and guile and just, menace to him defensively. And that's just not Rui. He does a lot of good things well, a lot of things well. He shoots really well and he's a good offensive player. It's just, that's not the number one thing the Lakers need from that 5th guy. The Wannabe GMs podcast, thank you for the super chat. What does a trade for Herb and Sadiq Bey look like? Pull up Sadiq Bey's contract. Recently looked at it, but just want to refresh my memory. So he's making $6.1 million. Then you have Herb Jones, who's still on his old salary, but will be kicking in the new one. So 13.9 now, 14.9 next year. Then it will jump up to 20.9 in 2027, 28. So that is it's exactly $20 million. So you can get there. Rui and Dalton would work. You could get a little bit over that with Gabe and Maxey. So you could do something like Gabe, Maxey, maybe throw in another Pelicans player, but do something like Gabe, Maxey, Dalton, and a first. I don't see why New Orleans does that. I don't think that's enough for Herb Jones alone, let alone Sadiq Bey added in. So I think realistically, it's probably something like Rui, Dalton, and the first. Now that is what I've playfully dubbed the Andrew Wiggins package. I'd rather have Herb Jones and Sadiq Bey than Andrew Wiggins. I'd rather have Herb Jones than Andrew Wiggins, but like you add in Sadiq Bey, I like that. So yeah, I mean, if you replace Rui with Herb Jones and then replace Dalton's spot with Sadiq Bey, like that to me is a much better and more balanced rotation. So I think it just comes down to what New Orleans' appetite is to rebuild and how they view Herb in that rebuilding process. I think Trey Murphy is a guy that just based on what they've been asking for and what they've been putting out in terms of his price. I just don't think it makes sense for them to trade him. And he's a guy who I would want to be a part of the next team with Jeremiah Fears and Derek Queen and what they're trying to build. I've said now multiple times, I'd also want Herb Jones to be a part of that, but I don't know if New Orleans views him the same way. And based on him already being locked into a longer term contract, you could look at it one of two ways. You could look at it as a team friendly contract, or you could look at some of the shooting and some of the, like, he's shot the ball well this year, but overall for his career, I think it's undecided what type of shooter he actually is. And some of the injury stuff, you could say, hey, like maybe we're selling high on Herb Jones if we could get some financial relief in the form of Rui. We get out of this long-term money, and we also get a first-round pick, and maybe we get Dalton as like, just a young kind of dart throw. So that, I guess, what would be like the most realistic version, but I don't even know if Herb Jones will be available. I think he remains like the dream target, but again, I don't know how open New Orleans is to that. Arno de Capo, thank you for the super chat. Still are missing a piece or two to be well-rounded. Any new trade candidates or rumors? Who is most likely to be moved? Nothing new on the trade front. I continue to say, like, two of the names that we talked about in the offseason that were projected to be available, had been rumored to be available, and I think were available to a degree, at least in one player's case, were Andrew Wiggins with the Heat and Dylan Brooks with the Suns. Right now, Miami's in third, Phoenix is in sixth, and if I'm those two teams, you have to really blow me away with an incredible offer to consider trading one of those two players. So things change in the NBA fast. Like Dallas is a team that I don't think they're going to trade with the Lakers, but Dallas could be a team that maybe they trade away a Daniel Gafford or PJ Washington or something just because of the state of the team and where they're at right now. I think Sacramento was a team that entering the season was not trying to sell off its parts, but now it might be willing to sell a Keon Ellis or someone like that. So things life comes at you fast in the NBA, and there's nothing humbling quite like the first month of the season when you really get a taste of where you're at and how you stack up against the rest of the league. So I think there are the teams right now who are struggling. Like I would look at all the lottery teams and say those are teams that are candidates to make some bigger trades, with the exception of maybe the Clippers, who don't have their pick and probably will be, go the other way, be desperate, try to improve the roster. Otherwise, New Orleans, Dallas, Sacramento, Utah, Washington, Brooklyn, Charlotte, those are some teams that I think will be looking to make trades. The question is, like, who's available? What's the price? And then also, is there anybody else here who, like Memphis, is starting to bounce back a little bit? They've won a couple games, playing a little bit better. Or like Memphis is a team with KCP, Santi Aldama, some guys that could be valuable rotation guys elsewhere. What happens with Memphis, right? So point being, like, I think we're still about a month away from trade season. So we can speculate and we could talk through different guys, but I think we won't have a better sense of where things are at until like mid-December. So I think we're still probably 3 weeks away from like real trade conversations. Mo Love, OG, how much upside for DA on this team? I'm not quite sure how to answer this. Like, are you saying his like numbers? Are you saying his impact? Are you saying like what the Lakers can do with DA on the team? I mean, I think right now this looks like a team to me that could make the conference finals as currently constructed. I have a hard time seeing finals and or championship just because of some of the defense and athleticism questions that I think you're going to need at the highest levels. And, I still, let's see where the defense is at coming off of tonight. The defense is back down to 17, so they've slipped below average. The offense is up to 6th now. So again, time is a flat circle, and we are back to at the beginning. All offseason I've talked about, I think the blueprint for this team realistically is going to be a top 5 offense, and ideally somewhere in that like 13 to 17 range defensively. That's where they're at right now, right outside the top 5, but I think they'll be there with more of a sample size with LeBron. So that to me is a really good team that could win a round or two in the playoffs. You're not winning a championship with the 17th ranked defense. And that's not to say it can't get better, but I do think the primary way it will get better is by making a trade. And we just don't know yet if the Lakers are doing that or what that looks like. But to bring it back to DA, I think he's done basically everything the Lakers have asked of him and needed from him. Really, the only thing you could look at and want a little bit more of is the rebounding, I think. The rebounding and the rim protection has been a little up and down. The rebounding, though, he's playing next to LeBron and Luka, who are two dominant wing rebound. I think Luka's probably the best rebounder on the team right now. But LeBron, we know, nightly 7-8 rebounds. And then Austin has been rebounding the ball pretty well, too. So Lakers have been rebounding the ball well overall. So I'm not going to hold that on Ayton. But outside of maybe that and some of the turnovers at times, I think he's pretty much done everything they've needed. So his upside, I think, is largely where it's at right now. He's averaging just under 16 points and a little over 8 rebounds. I think that's probably, I think I had him at like 15 to 16 and 10 rebounds a game going to the season. So he's pretty much there. The rebounds are a little bit lower than I'd like, but again, it's really just nitpicking. Shabugan, thank you for the super chat. LeBron missed 14 games. Denver has someone Stan Van Gundy called the best player ever. We're supposed to give them grace for missing Aaron Gordon. No, that's fine. Like I'm not telling you how to evaluate. I'm telling you how I evaluate. So that, like, if you don't want to give them grace, that's totally fine. I think the one advantage I think the Lakers have in this regard is that no team is set up with 3 offensive engines to the extent that the Lakers have. Obviously they were without LeBron for the first 14, but what team out there right now has 2 players playing at the level that Luka and Austin are playing at offensively? None. And that includes Denver. I think that, sure, like, we could debate Luka versus Jokic and how close or who's ahead or whatever, but I think Austin's been better than Jamal Murray to start the year. And Jamal Murray's having a hell of a year. He's, I think, especially factoring in that he'd be on the international team, has a strong all-star case. But I think Austin's been second team or third team All-NBA level up to this point in the season. So the Lakers are, like, point being, I think the Lakers are uniquely built to withstand injuries, which is a testament to Luka, Austin, and LeBron. It's also a testament to JJ and Rob and, like, the way they built the roster. So if anything, I'm making this more of a pro Lakers point in a way where I'm saying, like, I don't think Denver is as well equipped to withstand their injuries. Now, you also factor in Aaron Gordon he's kind of been like their Rui, where he's been shooting the heck out of the ball, whereas Cam Johnson has not been. And then he's also their best defender, especially in the front court. Like, it's a big loss for them. Now, again, if you don't want to give them grace, I'm not gonna hold that against you. Zakwan, thank you for the super chat. 1, should we wait for Keon in the summer or trade for him now? 2, turnover issue continues. Heat have very low turnover despite not having great point guard, or is it just because of Spo? I would say trade for Keon now, because free agency is not what it used to be, and there's no guarantee that the Lakers nab him in the summer. We don't even yet know what the Lakers cap situation is going to be. Are they a cap space team? Are they a team with exceptions? Like, we're way too far out from that to really have a clear picture of that. So I think if you have an opportunity to get a player, I always err on the side of, like, do it now rather than waiting to do it. In terms of the turnover issue, I thought 14 turnovers was fine tonight. Like, yes, it can be a bit of an issue, but when you have guys who are being, like, blitzed and trapped at the level that the Lakers are having, you're going to have some miscues at times. I would not compare them to the Heat, because the Heat are running the fewest ball screens in the tracking era right now, and they're very predicated on just speed and pace and beating their guys on downhill attacks and line drives, and it's just a different style of offense compared to the Lakers. So there are fewer passes and more so just attacking in a certain way. So I wouldn't compare them to the Heat. Like I agree in the sense of I think the turnovers have been an issue at times, and that has been the two things holding LA back from a top 5, if not top 3 offense, have been the shooting and the turnovers. The shooting seems to be regressing in a positive sense, and the turnovers continue to be up and down. But when they're good, the Lakers score 129 points against the number 2 defense in the league, and probably could have scored even more if they didn't pull away with a few minutes left. And NBA Enjoyer, thank you for the super chat. LBJ needs more on-ball reps, would help Luka too. Yeah, I think we've seen a little bit of that. It seems to be right now more of him playing off of the ball. And I think we've seen him more on the ball in the Austin-centric bench units, right? Against the Clippers and the Jazz, not as much tonight. I don't feel like we've even scratched the surface really here on like what LeBron can be or what LeBron was last season. So that's really encouraging because he's putting up the numbers for the most part, but I don't think we've seen 20, 24, 25 LeBron yet. And the fact that LA is now 4-0 since his return, and it's been a relatively light schedule. I mean, based on actual, like if we're just I think Dallas and the Clippers are better than their record, but if we're just judging it on opponents, it's 3 of the bottom 4 teams in the West. So like make of that what you will, but I think the Lakers have looked progressively better. And I still think LeBron is probably, with the way things are trending right now, he's probably still going to be the number 3 option in terms of ball handling. But as aforementioned, I think he will still have a lot of playmaking opportunities out of the post and out of the weak side. But it does seem like because of the speed and the downhill abilities right now of Luka and Austin, it is primarily going to be Austin and Luka running the pick and rolls. Shabugan, thank you for the super chat. What good team have they coasted against? Fair. My larger point was them coasting in general. I didn't mean for like I guess they haven't I mean, Golden State opening night, I would argue was not their best effort. Otherwise, that would be it. I mean, I don't remember saying that they coasted against a good team. If I did, I didn't mean it that way. I think in general they have coasted during stretches of games, especially against inferior teams. So that's really my point, is that I would like to see more of the killer instinct, like wire to wire, step on the neck and don't take your foot off for 48 minutes, like they had against Milwaukee in particular. Otherwise, like most of their going through, like, Minnesota, second game of the season was another good example of that. That was a close first half, and they did pull away in the second half, but they just have a lot of these, like they don't pull away till the third or fourth quarter, and it's very close up to that point. And I would just like to see more, like they get a big lead in the first and don't relinquish it. And to their credit, they have not blown a double-digit lead this season. Every game they've had a double-digit lead, they've won. So there's a testament to like resilience and not letting go of the rope in that regard. But I just, I guess like if you want to argue OKC, they started to coast a little bit in that game at one point. Like they got more demoralized and I think realized like the game is over pretty much in the second quarter. But I don't think they've coasted against a good team. But I think they've coasted against a lot of bad. I mean, if we could go through, I think they coasted against the Jazz. I think they coasted against the Pelicans. I think they coasted against the Hornets. I think they coasted against Memphis a little bit. I think they coasted against Sacramento a little bit. So like, I think that there's shades of coasting, but several of those games they were injured. So, it's hard to separate that. Shabugan, again, quote, Rue to the bench is the new thanks Obama, stub your toe, Rue to the bench, raining outside and forget your umbrella, Rue to the bench. And then he follows up with, my point is they coast when they think they can afford to. If they have it, they generally bring the effort against good teams. Yeah, I mean, and it's weird because I forgot who made this point. It might have been LFR, but they were I think it was LFR, yeah, that they were stating that like the Lakers, their schedule hasn't like aged well to a degree in the sense of like the 2 Portland wins were really impressive based on how Portland was playing at the time. When you look at it now, you're like, oh, Portland's under 500. Portland isn't very good. Okay, sure, you beat them shorthanded. You lost once to them. You beat them once, but a big deal that they're not very good. But that's not true. Like Portland, I think, is better than their record, but Portland was also better at that time. Same thing with Minnesota. Like Minnesota, those opening stretch, they beat them twice. In the first 5 games of the season. Like obviously one game was that without Luka, without LeBron. So that's impressive in and of itself, but Minnesota is not like regarded as highly as they were at the start of the season coming off of back-to-back conference finals. I think people now have them more in that like 6-7 range, not to do the meme, but so that's something that's kind of out of the Lakers' control right now. Right. And really like, I would say that the 2 like unassailable good teams they played up to this point in the season are OKC and San Antonio, and they beat San Antonio and got worked by OKC. I guess you could throw Miami in there too if you want. They beat Miami, so 2-1 against like top 4 teams, top 5 teams in their respective conferences. But I don't disagree with you. I just I guess we're kind of making the same point here, where my point is I don't think they should be coasting as much as they have this season. That is more so my point. I would like to see less coasting, whether it's a good team or whether it's a bad team. I would like to see more, I'm just going to blow this team out tonight. And we have not really seen that. Sorry, I'm going back up here. JR Madrano, thank you for the super chat. I'm intrigued by the Maxey archetype, but not Maxey himself. Thoughts on a 2 big lineup with a Maxey archetype with Jackson and Ayton? I like it. I think the Lakers don't have a true 2 big lineup right now, and I would like to see a true 2 big lineup. And Maxey, in theory, like to your point, that archetype is intriguing. The stretch big who also has some defensive versatility. I think he's, I was trying to make a Cinderella reference here, but I was about to completely butcher it. Like, the clock's striking midnight or whatever with him, where I think last couple games in particular, he has looked a little bit more pedestrian and shown his age a little bit more. So he might be more of like a every few games he pops type guy. And in the meantime, the Lakers just have to lean more on Jackson. And again, Maxey's like a every few games, he gives you something useful, but I think the Lakers probably need that because the other, like Houston and OKC both have 2 big looks that are very, very effective, and they could go zone in those 2 big looks. They could also play man in those 2 big looks. And then Denver doesn't quite have a 2 big look, but Aaron Gordon, I think Bill Simmons was making this point where Aaron Gordon just progressively continues to look bigger, and he's just a monster that is like one of the few guys that like non-center level that can actually match up with LeBron from a physical standpoint. And at this point might even just be like bigger than LeBron, at least from like a frame perspective. So Aaron Gordon is like a center sized player, but he has like the athleticism of a wing. So that like functionally it's almost like a 2 big look with Denver, but especially Houston and OKC, those 2 teams will go to 2 big looks and hammer you on the offensive glass. And they start 2 big looks. So that they're playing, that's their best lineup, that they're playing large important stretches of the game with 2 big looks. And then they reevaluate during the course of a game of if they're going to close that way. So I think LA having that would be nice. Like, I think you can get that out of LeBron if you really need it, but we've yet to see the Lakers face a real 2 big lineup. Like Utah was close, I guess, but Laurie's more of a perimeter player than, despite the size, like he's more of a perimeter big than or like a giant wing rather than an actual big. He's kind of like it's almost a wing 4 hybrid, whatever. Wannabe GM's podcast. Due to wanting to keep Rui, does it make sense to go after a DJJ level of starter and lean into depth? Any favorite targets in that range? Jay Green, Ochai, Zaire. I think Agbaji would be my favorite. The issue again that we run into here, I've made this point recently, is like the test of ideally the fifth guy you're trading for. Like, I don't think you're trading for Ochai Agbaji and moving Rui to the bench. I don't think that. I think it has to be a player with some juice. It has to be a player that you trade. Like, I don't think you're getting Andrew Wiggins without moving Rui, but if you add Andrew Wiggins, okay. Like, Andrew Wiggins, former number 1 overall pick, former champion, was the number 2 player on that Warriors team for stretches of that title run. Okay, Andrew Wiggins has some cachet. He's a name. Dylan Brooks has been a starter for basically most of his career, all defense guy. Okay, you can maybe kind of sell that, package that of, hey, we need this with the starting group. Herb Jones, okay, longer term piece that you're adding to Luka and Austin. Okay, but some of these younger, more unproven, untested guys, I think it's a harder sell. And I think you're bringing these guys in to move them to the bench, which could still work. But again, one thing I forgot to touch on tonight, the starting group was +5. This is my back of the napkin math here, but I had it +5 in 19 minutes, which is a step in the right direction. Still not what I'd like. I'd like to see some better. They had a couple good stretches and a couple bad stretches, and that is what netted out at +5. Like to see it a little bit more dominant from that group, right? Like that's another area where I think if you compare the Lakers starting group to Denver, Houston, and OKC, they get blown out of the water by those starting groups right now, at least. And that's an area that they could be better. But I would say Agbaji is the name I like the most of some of these. I'm not sure which Jay Green you mean here. Is it Josh Green? That I know that's been a popular one from Charlotte. But I like DJJ. He's obviously injured and he's with the Clippers, so I don't think it's likely. But I think the one limitation here is that I don't think you're acquiring that player and moving Rui to the bench or selling Rui on that, to be completely honest. And then Chuck Dangler, a.k.a. Fang Charlie, what up? Buha, hope Thanksgiving was good. I saw the IG reel with Buha Jr. That looked fire. What email account you use now? I'd like to podcast again. Thanks. Same email. So just send a follow-up and I will get back to you. All right, hopping in the chat here. Going to go about 5 more minutes, 5 to 10. So BC says 5 more minutes. So I got to give the people what they want. Glenn, well, we'll go 5 to 10. Tomorrow's my last day with my son, so I do need to get a little bit of sleep before he wakes me up at 7 a.m. E3P, what do you think it would take for a dude to get into the rotation? It doesn't seem like JJ is the type to change things just to try it. Yeah, it's probably going to take an injury or a major slump or reduction in play. I don't know, maybe if Maxey continues to struggle and JJ gets to the point where he doesn't trust Maxey, maybe he dusts off Adu. I think it is worth noting again, and I've noted this several times, that he has, when discussing Adu, he's often talked about this season in a developmental sense and called this season a development year for him. So based on that alone, that doesn't mean it can't change, but when you continually say that about a player, at least taking JJ's comments at face value, what I've gotten or gathered from that has just been Adu is going to not really play much outside of garbage time. So I know, I referenced playing him more earlier. I know a lot of fans are clamoring for him to play more. I totally get it. I just think based on the way JJ is doing the rotation right now and them being fully healthy, which I don't realistically, the Lakers are not going to be fully healthy the rest of the season already. I mean, they had Ayton get injured, then Smart get injured, and guys are going to be nicked up, and probably multiple guys are going to be nicked up throughout the course of the season. So I think that's probably his pathway into real minutes, but I don't know if that's going to happen anytime soon, realistically. Civic Citizen, it's hard for me to see Adu or Vando playing on this team when the Lakers switch all the time. Yeah, I mean, the one counterpoint that I like to make with this, because I think it's also a Marcus point as well, is like these guys are still, well, so I'm going to put Vando to the side because I do think Vando's off-ball defense can be problematic a lot because he loves to gamble and he will sometimes, it looks great when he gambles and it works, but then he will Vando's game plan discipline can be inconsistent, and I think he is a guy that the coaching staff will lay into, and I think in part some of the reason why he's been phased out of the rotation has been some of the mistakes he's made. Like I thought he had a particularly rough road trip where he did not play well. I thought he was not good in the Atlanta game, not good in the OKC game, and I think that like culminated in him being yanked from the rotation. So Vando's a little bit different because his screen navigation and off-ball decision-making at times is not the best. Adu is still, a piece of Play-Doh, a piece of clay where we're not quite sure what he's going to be defensively yet. And he was actually more of a helper than an on-ball guy in college, according to B-Ball Index. So Adu actually might still thrive in a switching scheme off of the ball because Adu is a guy you can probably switch onto bigs, and like he played small ball 5 at times in college, and I think the numbers were not a big sample size necessarily, but I still think there's value in having the athleticism out there, even in a switching group, because of the off-ball defense, because of the rebounding, because of loose balls, like the things that happen. Like that's still my point where. Because I think someone's made the point before of like, well, Rui versus Marcus, if they're just going to switch, like why have Marcus out there? Why not have Rui out there? And I'm like, well, Marcus is a much better off-ball defender than Rui. And so even if they are switching and they are trying to pick on an Austin or Luka or whoever, I still would rather have Marcus Smart as the off-ball defender than Rui. So like that I think kind of plays into this where in general, for some of the guys in the rotation, I would rather have Adu as the off-ball guy or even Vando as the off-ball guy than some of the guys who are continually in off-ball situations. So that's the only pushback to this. But in general, I agree with you that like the Lakers defensive system right now, that their defensive scheme does limit the viability and effectiveness of some of their primary perimeter guys. Madison, what if Kings say Keon Ellis for Bronny? Will LeBron say no? Well, I think LeBron would say no, but at this point, I think the Lakers would do that. And honestly, it's kind of a win for the Lakers. I mean, it's obviously a win for the Lakers in terms of flipping Bronny for Keon Ellis, but like it's a win for the Lakers that you could then say, hey, we drafted Bronny, we developed him into being this asset that the Kings wanted for Keon Ellis. Like, it's kind of a win-win. Andrew Tung, so sad Dalton's in the doghouse. Yeah, at this point, it's unclear. He's less in the doghouse than Vando because Vando in the Utah game didn't even play, and Dalton at least played in crunch time or garbage time. So yeah, he's at least not in the doghouse as much as Vando is, but yeah. Civic Citizen, if Vando could get through screens better, would you see him in the rotation? Maybe, but I think the big thing with Vando just continues to be the offensive limitations, and it's not even just the shooting. The shooting is a big part of it, but it's the finishing. I think it's already last year his finishing was trending in the wrong direction, and his finishing this year has been worse. So I think when you look at, he's worse at the rim this year than last year, and the 3-point shot is just a complete non-factor with him. It's just tough to play. Again, I've made the point a million times, so I don't like repeating myself, but he's basically a small ball 5 at this point, and the Lakers already have, between Ayton and Hayes, they already have 48 minutes of center play. So it's just tough to fit Vando in, especially because like I'll say the Vando Jackson minutes have been downright destructive and problematic. So you can only really play him, I guess, with Ayton. But then if he's not starting and he's only playing with Ayton in bench groups, that's like a very narrow window where maybe he's like a 2-shift player and he's like a 8 to 10 minute a night guy. But then like some of those Ayton groups, like they went with the too big look with Kleba tonight, and like sometimes it might be LeBron in there, and like it just gets a little funky. So we'll see. But for now, I think he's out of the rotation. Kent Carter, here's my hot take for the fifth starter, that the said player doesn't have to be a sniper, just good enough shooter to make it and an offensive threat at all times, finishing mid-range floaters, lob. Great D. I agree with you. I think it doesn't have to, it has to be a just good enough shooter. I think that's the key there. And I think there was a little chart going around. I forgot from what stat site that it was like the most efficient offensive players this season. And I think Deandre Ayton was 4th and Rui was 9th or 10th in that. And first and foremost, you got to give those two guys credit for buying into their roles, taking collective step back offensively. And with Ayton, it's very much like finishing out of the pick and roll, occasionally getting a post up or a little mid-range jumper, but like largely pick and roll, rim run, pick and roll, rim run, short roll playmaking. And Rui, it's a lot of catch and shoot, catch and shoot, catch and shoot, or attack and close out, get out in transition, but a lot of catch and shoot, right? So I think if you gave both players truth serum, neither player is playing the ideal offensive role for themselves, the role that they envision or the role that they feel capable of playing. But they both have bought in at a high level, and they've both been very efficient and effective. But so like you got to give them credit first and foremost. At the same time, I don't think it's a coincidence that they are both starters and both playing next to, like, now LeBron, but for most of the season next to Luka and Austin, who are right now two of the best playmakers in the NBA and just two of the better offensive forces in the NBA. And like those guys certainly benefit from, like tonight, how many uncontested dunks and layups did Deandre Ayton get? How many open threes did Rui get? They're getting that in part because of the offensive attention that is being drawn to Luka, to Austin, to LeBron, and they're benefiting off of that and they're eating. So point being, you don't have to be a Rui 50% catch and shoot guy. Like that would be great. But if you could be a high 30s catch and shoot guy, and again, just on catch and shoot, maybe with like, one dribble, maybe sidestep or whatever, off the dribble threes, or maybe like low 30s. So you average out to like close to league average. That's good enough, I think, for the quality and the quantity of looks that the Lakers are going to generate for that fifth player. But to your point, like if you can do other things offensively and then also be a great defender, that's the sweet spot. And that's where I do think guys like Wiggins and Herb Jones and Dillon Brooks check those boxes of being just good enough shooters, plus being able to do other things offensively, plus being really good defenders. So that's why those are three guys I continue to harp on and mention. Madison, Jovan, is Vandale plus salary and first and swaps enough for Nesmith, him at 3, Rui 6-man, problem solved, LOL. A couple things here. So Lakers only have one first to trade. So they could do Vando matching salary, a first, and multiple swaps, but only one first to trade. I continue to see people reference 2 firsts. That is not true. The Lakers, there are 2 eligible firsts to be traded in terms of a choice of which one they trade, but they can only trade one. So they can only trade either 2030 or 2032, but they can't trade both. So technically, or 20, 30, or 31. But point being, they can only trade one of those due to the Stepien rule. So Vando plus a first and swaps, I don't think is enough for Nesmith. The other thing here that I have continued to say when talking about Nesmith and when talking about Indiana is my understanding of Indiana's approach is they're viewing this year as a gap year to next year when Tyrese Halliburton returns. So they can get a lottery pick, get potentially a top 10 or top 5 pick, add that to their core, and then go into next year with Halliburton coming off the Achilles, over a year removed, ideally, close to, this is going to take some time for him to get back to being himself, but like still not yet even in his physical prime. You got Nembhard, you got Neesmith, you got Siakam, you potentially have Mathurin, depending on what happens with his contract situation. So I think if they end up trading someone, it's probably Mathurin or Shepherd. But Neesmith to me is like an essential ingredient to what they did on that finals run. And if you're trading Neesmith, you're reshaping that group, and I think in a worse way, especially if it's Vando, because Neesmith is a much better player than Vando. So it's like, I think my understanding is Indiana feels like they can, obviously they're a bad team now, but they get Halliburton back, they get that top 10 pick, and they find a center, and it's like all of a sudden they're back at the top of the East. So I think Neesmith is a keeper for Indiana. Civic Citizen, if you're the Pelicans, are you trying to make a trade to get a pick back for this upcoming draft? Yeah, but that's giving the Pelicans a lot of credit in terms of what they should do. Thomas, should we trade Dalton in a second for Goodwin or Ellis? I think salaries match up. At least we would get defense back in either trade. Neither of those guys produce much offensively. Ellis especially, yes. Goodwin, I would do. I think that would be a tough pill for the Lakers to swallow optically, admitting that they screwed up the Jordan Goodwin situation and that he's a better player than Dalton Connect. So I think they'd be a little hesitant to do that. But I think Keon Ellis, they would do that price. Mo Love notes that 5 minutes is up, and yes, the 5 minutes is up. I went a little over. Well, I said 5 to 10. I went a little over 10, but I am going to wrap here. I appreciate you all for rocking with me for over an hour and a half. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back Sunday night after Lakers Pelicans. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend, get some time with your family. As I said at the end of last show, I really appreciate you all for tuning in, for supporting, for subscribing, for liking, for commenting, for sharing, all that stuff. Just for tuning in, just for watching and listening. If that's all you do, I really appreciate it, and it means the world to me. So looking forward to closing 2025 in a strong manner. If the Lakers make it to Vegas, which I think they will, I will be out there to cover that. So looking forward to that. And a lot of big things coming next week, traveling on my first road trip of the season, going to Lakers Celtics, which Celtics are not what they have been over the last few years, but Lakers Celtics is always a fun one. But appreciate you guys, and I will talk to you all very soon.